back to our two-part series on the life and crimes of Sean Diddy Combs. In this explosive second installment, I detail Diddy's meteoric rise in the music industry, uncover the allegations regarding his volatile romantic relationships, and expose a shadowy past filled with violence and legal troubles dating back to the 1990s. I'll also shed light on Diddy's infamous white parties and the scandalous after-parties known as freak-offs, which are now at the center of a federal investigation involving racketeering, sex trafficking, and a slew of other allegations that have led to an indictment. We'll seek to uncover the possible motivations behind Combs' risky lifestyle choices. Why did he do it? Why did Sean Combs trade the luxuries of fame and fortune for drug-fueled escapades, sexual scandals, and the alleged exploitation of others? What path led Diddy from a billionaire business mogul to the kingpin of an alleged decades-long criminal enterprise? Join me as I dissect the cracks in Diddy's polished persona to reveal a narrative far darker than anyone could have imagined. This is part 2 of the life and crimes of Sean Diddy Combs. In the last episode, 23-year-old Sean Puffy Combs experienced his first professional failure in 1991, when a charity basketball game he promoted ended in the deaths of 9 individuals crushed in the crowd at the oversold event. This tragic accident, combined with his reputation for being difficult to work with, led to Combs' firing by Uptown Records. But through drive, charm, and expertly cultivated connections, Diddy rebounded by launching his own label, Bad Boy Records. In just 3 short years, Combs turned Bad Boy into a cultural powerhouse. The label became home to some of the most iconic names in music, including the Notorious B.I.G., Faith Evans, and Craig Mack. Bad Boy's artists would redefine hip-hop and R&B, crossing over into pop and top 40 charts for the first time in music history. One of Bad Boy's defining moments came in 1994 with the release of Ready to Die, the debut album from the Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls. Packed with gritty storytelling and infectious beats, the album became an instant classic, cementing Biggie's status as one of the greatest rappers of all time and establishing Bad Boy Records as a major player in the industry. Diddy's reputation as a star maker continued to rise in 1994 and 1995 as the producer of one of the best-selling pop records of the decade, TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool. As his reputation in the music industry grew, so did his ego. Combs began appearing alongside his biggest star, the Notorious B.I.G., on stage and in videos. Additionally, he attempted to cozy up to megastar rapper Tupac Shakur. Combs wanted to duplicate Tupac's ability to blend raw and authentic rap flows with infectious beats that also appealed to mainstream America. But Tupac had no respect for Diddy and spurned his advances. According to a friend of Biggie's, both Tupac and Biggie considered Diddy a, quote, corny executive. Tupac, however, respected and admired fellow artist Biggie Smalls. According to Monique Bunn, a hip-hop photographer who was an insider, Combs felt pushed to the side by both of them and was jealous of their friendship. The friendship between Tupac and Biggie was short-lived. The infamous East Coast-West Coast beef between Suge Knight's Death Row label and Bad Boy Records culminated in the murders of Tupac in September 1996 and Biggie 6 months later. I covered those stories in Season 1, Episode 11, The Day the Music Died, Tupac and Biggie. There's a link in the show notes. There have also been rumors over the years that Diddy was, if not directly responsible, at least an influential player in the murders of Tupac and Biggie. If you'd like to learn about that intriguing story, I'll share it in a bonus episode for Patreon members only. There's a link in the show notes to become a member. Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, was killed in a drive-by shooting on March 9, 1997. 2 weeks later, Bad Boy Records released his album, Life After Death. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart. 2 singles, Hypnotize and Mo Money, Mo Problems, made the Billboard Hot 100 as number 1 singles. Combs expressed grief over his friend Biggie's death, while at the same time using the situation to increase his reputation and profits. According to Bad Boy's publicist LaJoyce Brookshire, Combs ordered her to focus all the label's resources on promoting Biggie's album. Quote, He demanded it be number one, number one, number one, top 10, Brookshire told Rolling Stone magazine in 2024. Life After Death sold 700,000 copies in its first week. Combs used the tragic murder of his biggest star to increase his visibility and garner more attention for himself. A few months after Biggie's death, Rolling Stone approached Combs wanting to feature Biggie on the magazine's cover. Combs insisted he be put on the cover, telling Bad Boys president Kirk Burroughs, "No, he's dead. I'm putting out my album in July. I need to be on the cover." Combs got his cover, and his debut album, No Way Out, sold nearly 5 million copies. He would admit in a 1999 interview that Biggie's death led to big business for him. Quote, "I think his passing added to the fame," he said candidly. "At least 2 million copies of No Way Out sold due to his death straight up." And he added, "That doesn't necessarily feel good, but that's the reality." One of Combs' singles on No Way Out was written in Biggie's memory. Titled I'll Be Missing You, it was the first rap song to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Just a quick aside here regarding the many iterations of Sean Combs' name. He has alternately gone by the stage names Puffy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, and Love. I will refer to him by the names he most commonly used during the era I'm referring to in the timeline, but know that the names can be used interchangeably. As big a success as Sean Combs was career-wise, he had much less luck in his romantic relationships. As we learned in Part 1, Combs decided to keep romantic entanglements at bay after his heart was broken in college. He described this as being a player. However, that didn't stop him from having several long-term relationships and even fathering children, all while he kept his options open and dated other women. In 1993, Combs fathered a son with girlfriend Missa Hilton, a fashion designer. Although they broke up soon after the baby, Justin Dior, was born, they stayed close and co-parented their son. Their on-again, off-again relationship lasted until 2007. In the 1990s, Combs was also romantically linked to model and actress Kim Porter, whom he met when she was working as a receptionist for Uptown Records. They had 3 children together, Christian, born in 1998, and twin daughters Jessie and Delilah, born in 2006. They would never marry, and the relationship was punctuated by breakups and reconciliations until 2007. Porter sadly died in 2018 of lobar pneumonia at the age of 47. Combs and Porter were on the outs in 1999 when he began a relationship with actress and singer Jennifer Lopez, also known as J-Lo. Lopez, who started her career as a backup dancer in videos, launched an acting career in the mid-90s. Her portrayal of the murdered Tejano singer Selena in the feature film of the same name made her a Hollywood star. In 2000, Puffy and J-Lo became a Hollywood power couple after walking the red carpet together at the 42nd Grammy Awards. J-Lo wore her iconic green Versace dress, which became a worldwide media sensation and was the most searched-for image in Google's history. Combs, now going by the name Puff Daddy, released a second studio album titled Forever in 1999. It reached the top of the R&B, hip-hop, and pop charts. He achieved the crossover success he'd aspired to as a musical artist, and his business ventures, including his Sean John clothing line, were making him a multimillionaire. Yet Sean Combs still could not control his anger, and often let his temper get the best of him. In 1999, angry that a scene in a music video he'd appeared in was not cut out as he'd requested and was released unedited, he barged into the office of Interscope Records manager Steve Stout and attacked him. Quote, "He punched me in the face, and then he grabbed the phone and bashed me in the head with it," Stout told a reporter with the Los Angeles Times. Combs settled the matter privately with Stout for a reported $500,000. He avoided a potential 7-year prison sentence by taking a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to a charge of harassment and was ordered to attend a 1-day anger management class. On December 27, 1999, Combs was at a nightclub in New York with his girlfriend J-Lo. Also present was a young rapper and protege of Puffy's, Jamal Barrow, who went by the stage name Shine. Combs got into an argument with another man inside the club, and shots were fired. 3 bystanders were injured. One club-goer, Natanya Rubin, was shot in the face. Since the night of the shooting, she has unequivocally stated it was Sean Combs who fired the weapon that shot her. Immediately after the shooting, Combs and J-Lo fled from the club in a hurry. The SUV they were driven away in reportedly ran 11 red lights to escape the area before cops arrived. Combs, J-Lo, and Combs' bodyguard, Alex Jones, were arrested and initially charged with involvement in the shooting, but charges were quickly dropped against J-Lo. Combs, Barrow, and Jones faced charges of gun possession, bribery, and reckless endangerment. Prosecutors alleged that Combs had attempted to bribe his driver to tell the police the gun was his for $50,000. After a week-long trial, Combs and Jones were acquitted, but Jamal Shine Barrow was found guilty of the charges of criminal possession of a weapon, first-degree assault, and reckless endangerment. He was acquitted of attempted murder. Shine spent almost 9 years behind bars. Upon release, he was deported to his home country, Belize. He'd released 2 albums, one of them while he was behind bars. Both albums sold well. But after his release, Barrow decided he was through with the music business. His second act was perhaps a surprising choice and a complete 180 from his previous life. I'll share updates about Shine in the Patreon bonus episode as well. Rumors have long circulated and recently resurfaced about Combs' ability to escape responsibility for the 1999 club shooting. Some claim that Combs offered Shine a reported $1 million to buy his silence and take the fall for him. However, Shine has denied this, saying the story is ridiculous. Vitanya Rubin sued Combs for $130 million. Combs settled the lawsuit with the 3 shooting victims in 2011 for an undisclosed amount. Combs and J-Lo split in 2001, and she remained quiet about the relationship for years. Recently, she's gone on the record to say that Diddy's infidelity ended their relationship. Diddy didn't let her go easily, though. A former Bad Boy intern said Combs stalked J-Lo by proxy, sending staffers to camp outside offices and studios where she was working. He had them hold up signs imploring her to take him back. Cassie Ventura reported the same behavior whenever she attempted to break up with Combs. She'd go into hiding to get away, but he directed his staff to track her down. Once they did, he relentlessly harassed her by showing up, calling, and texting until she finally gave in and returned. Because she was contracted to an unprecedented 10-album deal with her boyfriend's record label, Cassie felt stuck with no way out. But that would be in the future. Let's rewind a bit to the early 2000s and complete the timeline up to Diddy's relationship with Cassie Ventura. In 2003, he reconciled with Kim Porter. In 2006, when she was pregnant with their twins, Porter discovered he was expecting another child with a business associate named Sarah Chapman. His second son, Chance Combs, was born to Chapman, and 5 months later, Kim Porter gave birth to their twin daughters. Combs split with Porter in 2007, around the same time he began his relationship with Cassie Ventura. There were at least 2 other significant relationships in Sean Combs' life. He was in a long-term relationship with influencer Gina Hun between 2014 and 2019. The second was with Dana Tran, a model and cybersecurity professional. Combs and Tran had a baby girl in 2022, who they named Love Sean Combs. In 2019, soon after her split with Combs, Hun claimed in an interview that Diddy had physically abused her during their 5-year relationship. She alleged that he grabbed her by the hair, punched her in the back of the head, and stomped on her stomach until she couldn't breathe. Hun said that the relationship ended when, quote, "I started fighting back because I was sick of his shit," unquote. She claims she reported this abuse, but wasn't taken seriously until 5 years later when the video of Cassie being kicked and dragged was released, precisely as she said she'd been treated. Diddy described the deal he offered to women whom he had relationships with in a 2015 interview. With his 16-year-old son Christian sitting beside him, Combs told the hosts of the radio show, The Breakfast Club, quote, "If I'm in a relationship with you, 25% of the time, you're going to just feel like, oh man, I hate being here. This guy cheated on me. He lied on me. But then there's 75% of, I'm going to make you the happiest woman in the whole wide world. I'm going to be there to support your dreams. I'm going to be there to hold you, listen to you. I'm going to be there to be your best friend. And I promise you'll smile the most. You know who I am. This is what it is. Which deal would you choose?" End quote. Diddy's violent temper wasn't just reserved for the women in his life. he was involved in several violent altercations between 2013 and 2015. According to witnesses, at a 2013 MTV Video Music Awards after-party, a visibly intoxicated Diddy had words with Kendrick Lamar and allegedly tried to pour a drink on the rapper. J. Cole, a successful young rapper collaborating on an album with Lamar, intervened in the confrontation. A scuffle in which pushing and shoving occurred but no punches were thrown was quickly broken up. Both Cole and Combs denied that a fight took place, but the 2021 lyrics of a J. Cole song would suggest otherwise. My last scrap was with Puff Daddy, who would have thought it, he raps on a song titled Let Go My Hand. He also raps about playing Puff Daddy albums so much as a kid, quote, "You would have thought my favorite rapper was Puff. Back then I ain't no shit. Now I know too much," end quote. Diddy's behavior as a hothead itching for a fight directly contradicts the image he's cultivated as a polished and professional entrepreneur. But it seemed no one was immune from his thuggish score settling, executives, celebrities, musical artists, or regular citizens who happened to cross his path. In 2014, a fight allegedly broke out between Diddy and Canadian rapper Drake at a nightclub in Miami. Witnesses reported that Diddy punched Drake in the face and was heard to say, "You will not disrespect me." Combs was angry over competition regarding the rights to a beat that would become Drake's song 0 to 100. In 2015, Combs attended his son Justin's football practice at the University of California, Los Angeles. The assistant football coach, Sal Alosi, reprimanded Justin while he was on the field. Alosi commented to Justin Combs that he would, quote, "be treated like everyone else, whether or not his famous father was present." Diddy took this comment to be disrespectful towards him and his son. When practice ended, Combs and Justin went to Alosi's office where they exchanged words, which ended with Combs grabbing the coach, according to witnesses. Others intervened and tore Combs away from Alosi. On his way out, still angry, Combs grabbed a kettlebell from the gym and swung it at another employee. Combs' attorney would later claim that his client's actions were done in self-defense to protect himself and Justin. The Los Angeles District Attorney decided not to file assault charges against Combs. This episode is brought to you by Lumi. Lumi Whole Body Deodorant is one of my favorite products ever. Did you hear me say whole body deodorant? Lumi was developed by a doctor who thought deodorant should actually control body odor, not just cover it up. I love that Lumi is safe to use anywhere your body creates odor. It's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. That's amazing. So if you're stuck in a mall shopping for the holidays, wearing your winter coat, fleece-lined leggings, and scarf, because baby, it's cold outside, but the mall temp is about 75 degrees, well, you know you're going to start smelling a little funky under all those layers. But with Lumi Whole Body Deodorant, you'll be fresh all day. Lumi has solid deodorant sticks, cream tube deodorants, body washes, and now sweat control deodorant that provides 72-hour odor and sweat control for pits, privates, and beyond. My favorite product is Lumi's spray deodorant. I've tried other whole body deodorant sprays, and Lumi's is the only one that didn't sting my skin, so I know it's gentle. But wow, does it control odor. It's the best product I've ever found for keeping me smelling fresh all day, whether working in the garden, working out in the gym, or just sweating in the mall. Lumi's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like their mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get 15% off all Lumi products with our exclusive code. And if you combine the 15% off with the already discounted starter pack, that equals over 40% off their starter pack. Use code ONCE for 15% off your first purchase at lumideodorant.com. That's once at lumideodorant.com. That's code ONCE at lumideodorant.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Lumi. There are many options available today to help you reach your weight loss goals. We must consider many factors when choosing the best plan. Is it backed by science? Is it affordable? Is it healthy? And of course, does it work? I'm happy to tell you that Mochi Health checks all these boxes. Mochi Health is the affordable and convenient way to connect with board-certified doctors and dietitians for personalized treatment options to reach your goals, with or without medical insurance. You'll only pay a $79 monthly subscription fee and the cost of medication if not covered by medical insurance. And Mochi keeps prescription costs affordable, including GLP-1s like Ozempic and Zepbound. Everything is done online, making it super convenient. You can get started in minutes by filling out a simple form, choosing a plan, and setting up a virtual video visit with one of Mochi's medicine providers. It could not be more simple. Finally, you can access the help and support you need to make easy, sustainable changes and achieve real results. How exciting is that? Get started at joinmochi.com and use our special discount code ONCE for $40 off. That's joinmochi, MOCHI.com, and use code ONCE for $40 off. And thanks for supporting the show. Do you remember opening up your holiday gifts as a kid and finding underwear in that festively wrapped gift box? I bet you were disappointed. Well, if they'd been MeUndies, you wouldn't have been disappointed. You would have oohed and awed. Why? Because MeUndies has launched MeUndies Kids, their new super soft kids underwear line. MeUndies Kids has done rigorous research on the styles and patterns kids love. For boys, there are boxer briefs, and for girls, there are bikini briefs. And they all come in such fun patterns: brightly colored unicorn prints, astro patterns, sharks, and even pizza slices. For the holidays, there are cute sledding hedgehogs, plaid lumberjack style, and snowy penguins. See? Fun. I gifted my little a pack of MeUndies boxer briefs. Hold on, let me have him tell you how much he loves them. Hey Mateo, don't you love these cool undies Mimi gave you?
Jeez, don't flash these babies around here. There can be girls on this floor.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Well, you can tell me later in private.
You can't be too careful when it involves underwear.
Well, I'll just tell you. Mateo loves them. They fit great, they're tagless, so they're perfect for sensitive skin, and made from ultramodal fabric that's breathable, stretchy, and oh so comfy. Check out the brand new MeUndies Kids line today. To get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping, go to meundies.com/once and enter promo code ONCE. That's meundies.com/once. Code ONCE for 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in. Beginning in 1998, Sean Puffy Combs' white parties became legendary. These exclusive events, to which even A-list celebrities clamored to be invited, were held annually. Guests were required to adhere to a strict dress code. They must wear all white. Held in opulent venues from the Hamptons to Miami, these parties were extravagant, even by Hollywood standards. The guest list included music industry icons Beyoncé, Jay-Z, Mariah Carey, and Rihanna, Hollywood A-listers Will Smith and Leonardo DiCaprio, top models and influencers Naomi Campbell and Kim Kardashian, professional athletes like Tom Brady, and business moguls like Donald Trump and Martha Stewart, among other high-profile individuals. But rumors circulated for years that the after-parties following these soirees were even more astonishing. The after-parties were cloaked in secrecy, but clues about what went on behind closed doors were often shared with a wink and a nod. Diddy himself liked to drop hints. During an appearance on her daytime talk show, host Ellen DeGeneres teased him about the rumored wild goings-on at these late-night gatherings. "I think your parties would start around midnight," she quips. Diddy chuckles. "That's a different kind of party." He also describes how people attending the after-parties are required to surrender their cell phones at the door, and mentions that once they enter, quote, "doors are locked." Ellen called that, quote, "kind of scary." Diddy described the venues where the after-parties were sometimes held. "We'll, take over the top floors of a hotel," he begins. Ellen cuts in, saying, "Yeah, I know about them," with a smirk. Everyone would know about them after a 14-page federal indictment charging Sean Diddy Combs with racketeering, sex trafficking, and other charges was released in September 2024. These were the parties that came to be known as freak-offs. As I detailed in the last episode in Part 1, Cassie Ventura's lawsuit against Diddy opened up a can of worms. It led to a federal investigation of his alleged criminal activities. Homeland Security investigations raided Combs' residence in Los Angeles and Miami in March 2024. Evidence uncovered in those searches led to his arrest on September 16th. He'd be accused of participating in, quote, "creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice, end quote. But the linchpin of the Fed's case was the after-parties Diddy called freak-offs. According to the indictment, these freak-offs were, quote, elaborate and produced sex performances in which Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. Women were coerced by Combs by, quote, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence, end quote. The federal investigation determined the freak-offs began in 2008 or 2009 and continued for years. The indictment described how the activities at these events were facilitated, what they consisted of, and for what purpose. Female victims would, quote, be lured into Combs's orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers. These were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded, sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, end quote. Combs kept the videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers, the indictment stated. Combs used employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, to facilitate and assist in these activities. Finally, the document states that Combs carried out this criminal enterprise for, quote, fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the sexual exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers, end quote. Combs is facing racketeering charges because prosecutors have accused him of behaving like a mobster or drug kingpin. Quote, using his underlings to carry out his commands, Combs expected absolute loyalty and ruled with threats of violence, end quote. Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, claims that the activities to which the indictment refers were not sexual assault, nor did they involve force, fraud, or coercion as the federal sex trafficking statute requires. It's not sex trafficking if everyone wants to be there, Agnifilo says. He claims that what the feds describe as exploitation and criminal acts were, quote, all consensual encounters between Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura, who were in a long time, often troubled, and complex relationship, end quote. While he acknowledges that the sexual activities Combs engaged in might be eyebrow-raising to some people, they did not constitute crimes. But one hurdle the defense will have to face is how to explain the now infamous hotel surveillance video of Combs grabbing, kicking, and dragging Ventura. In her lawsuit, Ventura stated that the video depicts her attempting to flee the hotel where she was forced to participate in one of the multiple-day freak-offs. If this is true, it will be a tall order for the defense to claim that her participation was consensual. They will also have to explain allegations that Combs bribed a hotel security officer to obtain the video, which, according to the feds, went missing 3 days after the assault. I've shared how the federal indictment describes the activities orchestrated by Diddy that were typical of these so-called freak-offs. To give you a less legally sanitized version of what they entailed, here's what I learned from first-hand witness accounts. According to witness statements made to federal investigators, Combs held the multi-day freak-offs at high-end hotels around the country. Male sex workers were hired, sometimes transported from other states, to perform sex acts with women recruited for this purpose. The women were not sex workers. Some of them were Diddy's romantic partners. Cassie Ventura alleges in her lawsuit that she was often forced, bribed, threatened, or coerced to participate in these sex acts by her then-boyfriend, Sean Combs. Other women were lured to the parties with promises of career opportunities in one of Diddy's businesses or under the pretense of Combs being interested in them romantically, according to the federal indictment and victim statements. Once there, women were offered drugs and/or alcohol. Reportedly, cocaine, oxycodone, Xanax, ecstasy, and GHB were often available and distributed at these parties. Some victims claimed that they were offered an alcoholic beverage that, unbeknownst to them, was laced with a controlled substance, such as ecstasy. Once compliant or intoxicated enough to render them unable to offer resistance, the women were made to perform sex acts or had sex acts performed on them by the male sex workers. Combs would be nude as he watched, often masturbating. The acts would also be video recorded on cell phones or other devices without the consent or knowledge sometimes of the victims. The rooms in which the sex acts took place were specially lit and designed to facilitate video recording. One acquaintance of Diddy's who was not present at these parties, but claims to have seen the recordings, says, quote, "The videos I saw were straight-up pornos directed by Diddy. That's what they were," end quote. In part 1 of this series, I detailed the bombshell lawsuit filed by Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, that opened up a Pandora's box of allegations regarding his abusive behavior and history of violence. We've also examined Diddy's career and how he reached the top with confidence, drive, and determination. Additionally, you've heard about the allegations of misogyny and exploitation directed towards women, including stories alleging exploitation of not just his romantic partners, but artists he was in business with and employees who worked for him. We learned the details of what has been sensationally reported as Diddy's freak-off parties. These orchestrated sex orgies, as they are described by witnesses, were sometimes a part of, and sometimes separate from, Diddy's after-parties. The after-parties were larger events that took place later in the evening after one of Diddy's social events ended. As Diddy stated on The Ellen Show, specially invited guests were allowed to stay for, quote, "a different kind of party after midnight." One party attendee told TMZ she was invited to Diddy's mansion in Miami. His residence is on Star Island, a man-made island in Biscayne Bay, Florida. The woman, Tanea Wallace, a singer-songwriter, was seeking representation for her music career when an associate of Diddy's invited her to meet with him. She arrived at the mansion with a friend early one morning, thinking she was going to have a sit-down with the music producer. Before entering the property, she was required to relinquish her cell phone, as were all the guests. She was first escorted onto the grounds and taken to the pool area, where a party was in full swing. Wallace said she was surprised to see how many people were there and how intoxicated they appeared to be, as it was only 7 a.m. She realized the party must have been going on for some time. But just as surprising was that many, if not most of the guests, were naked. She saw some skinny dipping in the pool, some smoking drugs, and a lot more guests drinking and carrying on. The music was being played at a high decibel level. It was house music with a thumping beat that she found distracting and disorienting. Wallace was startled when the host suddenly appeared close behind her. She turned to find herself face to face with Diddy. He was peering into her eyes intently and appeared intoxicated. "Are you enjoying my house?" he inquired. She said she was. He suggested she go inside the mansion to enjoy the rest of the party. Quote, "So I went inside to see what was going on. That's when things got really weird," Wallace told Harvey Levin of TMZ. The party was packed with easily over 100 people. She saw more nude people, some gathered in clusters. Most appeared high or intoxicated. Some guests were doing drugs and others were having sex in the open. This was an orgy, she realized. A male guest came up to her and started rubbing on her with his hands. She carefully pushed him away and went back outside as quickly as possible. Diddy was out there behaving very animated, jumping all around, she says, and yelling. She described him as clearly intoxicated and enjoying himself. Later, she witnessed Diddy sitting on an outdoor sofa with his robe open. He was nude and masturbating, quote, "so we all could see," she claims. Wallace said she saw at least 6 recognizable people, all celebrities in the music industry, participating in the party activities. Diddy appeared completely uninhibited, seemingly unconcerned that strangers like her were witnessing these activities. Just when she thought she couldn't be more shocked, walking through the house toward the front door, she saw young people, too young to be in such a setting, Wallace said. Harvey Levin asks her to clarify, quote, "Are you saying you saw minors there?" Clearly uncomfortable, she waits for Levin to draw his own conclusions. "We all have common sense," she says. "They were little people that should not have been there." She pauses emotionally and ends by saying, "It's a shame." While Wallace doesn't claim to have witnessed children being molested or abused, she found their presence around adults engaging in sex and drug use very inappropriate and alarming. Another witness, Justin Latovsky, interviewed by Levin, says he attended a Diddy White party when he was 6. His parents were invited to cover it for the press, and since it was during the day, they took their young son with them, as was routine. The party was at a mansion in the Hamptons, and Justin said he'd been to other events in the Hamptons before, quote, "but never a party like this." He and his parents had been at the party for about an hour or so, quote, when people started to get comfortable. He said he saw people smoking weed and women going topless and jumping in the pool. No one seemed concerned that a kindergartner was present. There have been other incidents over the years of Diddy inappropriately exposing minors to adult activities. The stories most often repeated are his relationships with Usher and Justin Bieber when they were very young. Usher began singing as a child and was discovered at age 13. LaFace Records signed him, but his voice began to change when he hit puberty. His producer, L.A. Reid, thought Usher's image was too young for the music they were producing. He was 14. So he asked Diddy if he could send the teen to him to work with him to, quote, make him more edgy. Will you take this kid and teach him your swagger, he asked. Can you give him some of your flavor? Diddy agreed, and Usher was sent to live and work with Diddy in New York City. Reid called it Flavor Camp. There are videos from Usher's time in New York that show the child hanging out with Diddy and his friends, attending parties and going to nightclubs. Usher lived with Diddy for almost a year while they worked on his album. Although Reid later admitted it may have been irresponsible to send the boy to, quote, the wildest party guy in the country, he says it produced the desired results. Puffy had done exactly what I wanted him to do for Usher. He gave this little kid a hip-hop-infused R&B sound full of bad boy swagger, Reid wrote in his memoir. In 2004, Usher spoke to Rolling Stone about his experiences with Diddy a decade earlier. He said Diddy introduced him to, quote, a totally different set of shit, sex specifically. Sex is so hot in the industry, man, he continued. There were always girls around. You'd open a door and see somebody doing it, or several people in a room having an orgy. You never knew what was going to happen, end quote. In 2016, during an interview on The Howard Stern Show, Usher admitted that he didn't know if he fully understood what he was witnessing at that age. Quote, I got a chance to see some things. It was pretty wild. It was crazy. There were very curious things taking place, and I didn't necessarily understand it, end quote. As for whether or not he would send his children to Puffy Flavor Camp, the father of four responded with an emphatic, hell no. Then there's Justin Bieber. Bieber was introduced to Diddy by Usher when he was 15. The Canadian singer was discovered on YouTube performing Usher and Chris Brown tunes when he was 12. He became a pop sensation when his first single, One Time, was released in 2009. Reid also signed Bieber to his label. Reid was so impressed by Diddy's mentorship of Usher that he encouraged Bieber's relationship with the 40-year-old music executive. In a video taken during that time and shared on YouTube, Diddy, with Bieber at his side, points to the boy and says, quote, he's having 48 hours with Diddy, where we hanging out, and what we're doing we can't really disclose. But it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. We're gonna go full crazy, he states, while Bieber giggles self-consciously. Texas attorney Tony Busby claims to have over 100 clients who have accused Combs of sexual abuse and assault. He says that over 20 of these clients who intend to file civil suits against Diddy are minors. Quote, our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old. We have an individual who was 14 and one who was 15, Busby says. He further alleges that most of the underage victims were boys looking to break into the music business. The lawyer reports that the abuse goes back to 1991 and often occurred at events like Diddy's white parties, release parties, 4th of July gatherings, and other social affairs, quote, from Hollywood to the Hamptons. So far, these are only allegations, and Combs' attorney has stated that the music producer, quote, vehemently denies these claims as false and inflammatory. No criminal charges have been filed against Sean Diddy Combs for sexual abuse involving minors. However, Combs has clearly demonstrated inappropriate boundaries with children in the past. Nowadays, you'd imagine that he or his associates might be smart enough to avoid the risk of impropriety when it comes to minors. But as I've outlined in this episode, Combs has been able to avoid any significant consequences for his actions, including weapons violations, assault, and allegedly attempted murder. Until now. Until 2024, he may have felt invincible. Combs may have concluded that no matter what he did, or who it affected, he could do what he pleased and get away with it. His money, power in the music industry, and connections have allowed him to buy, bribe, or bully his way out of all consequences. Allegedly. But let's take a quick look at his upbringing to determine how his early life experience might have led to his lack of boundaries around children. We'll return for a moment to his early childhood to look at what may have informed his behavior regarding sexuality and perhaps resulted in this risky behavior. We know that Sean Combs' mother was left alone to raise her children after her husband was killed. Sean was just a toddler then, and his mother wanted to provide her children with a stable home and a good education. Janice Combs worked multiple jobs so they could attend private schools. We can speculate that although his grandmother helped raise him, Sean may have been left unsupervised occasionally or perhaps frequently. We used to call these kids latchkey kids. I was one, as perhaps were many of you. The positive side of this is that children raised with less supervision tend to be more responsible and resilient. The negative side is that they receive less guidance from adults during their formative years, which requires them to navigate the world with a child's limited understanding and immaturity. Combs relates a story about his early exposure to sex in his biographical documentary, Sean Combs, Portrait in Black and White. Quote, "In New York, there was a channel called Midnight Blue. It was a porn channel. I used to watch it as a kid," he states candidly. Combs implies that he learned about sex through the pornographic videos he watched as a child. He reports having sex for the first time at age 12. He doesn't state who it was with or how old his partner was, but says, "I wasn't scared." He then brags about his performance, saying that even at the young age of 12, he thought he was as good at sex as the people he watched on Midnight Blue. "I was impressed by my performance," he says proudly. This is one example of how inappropriate early exposure to adult content can significantly influence a child's attitudes about sex and sexuality. They begin to form ideas about what a sexual relationship should be before they are mature enough to understand what constitutes a safe and healthy relationship. Children also do not have the emotional maturity to form intimate connections rooted in mutual respect and admiration for another person. They can only experience sex as the fulfillment of a physical need and in a self-centered way. We see this lack of boundaries later in the ease with which Diddy exposes minors to sexual situations. In a 2010 Playboy interview, Diddy revealed that he attempted to have intercourse at the age of 7 with a girl who he believed was 9 or 10. His mother and babysitter found out about this, and he was punished. But we don't know much more about this event. Regardless, for a 7-year-old to be initiating sex with another child is deeply concerning and suggests that he may have been exposed to sexuality even younger than he has reported. While Diddy also claims he felt no trepidation during his first sexual encounter, this doesn't mean that there were no damaging effects. Having sex at such a young age could have affected him in that it shaped his attitude towards consent and age-appropriate sexual behavior in the future. Research in the area of early sexuality has found a correlation between minors who engage in intercourse before their 14th birthday with dating violence and other high-risk behaviors. The age at which someone has their first sexual experience also plays a role in long-term outcomes regarding the nature of future romantic relationships. And as we've seen, Combs had a history of troubling relationships, to say the least. It's interesting to note that because he was exposed to porn so early, Combs' focus on self-gratification, rather than sexual intercourse with a partner, seems to play a significant role in his sex life. From the details in Cassie's lawsuit, it's alleged that Diddy directed her to have sex with male prostitutes while he looked on and masturbated. Tanea Wallace saw many people at Diddy's party engaged in sexual intercourse, but only saw the hosts engaged in solo sex. Well, you get the idea, not to put too fine a point on it. In addition, I'll speculate that boys who are exposed to pornographic depictions of sex early in their lives have an unrealistic expectation of the act and may learn to treat their partners as sex objects and have trouble forming intimate emotional connections. This is somewhat evident in Diddy's treatment of both romantic partners and others whom he allegedly objectified, exploited, and used for his sexual gratification. One blatant and creepy example of this objectification of women occurred at some of Diddy's white parties. He would hire a woman to lie on the buffet table naked to serve as the centerpiece. Food items like grapes and cheese were strategically placed on her body, which guests snacked on. The woman is literally treated as an object, like a plate or a platter, and not as a human being. As I stated at the beginning of this series, Sean Diddy Combs has been unmasked as a serial abuser, a predator, and to some, a monster. If this is true, the question remains, what created the monster? I've attempted to answer that in this 2-part series. The following are some of the conclusions I've drawn from what we know so far. Beneath the polished image of the mogul Sean Diddy Combs lies a shadow side. The shadow side lives in a state of anxiety, which can only be appeased by being in complete control of those around him. He exerts this control through bribery, fear, and violence. To understand the origins of such behavior, we dissected his story by looking into his early history of narcissism, the profound impacts of childhood trauma, and the toxic interplay of power and unchecked privilege. Narcissism, as a psychological construct, begins as a normal stage of child development, but can become pathological if not resolved in a healthy way. Narcissism, or to put it simply, an overinflated ego, can take hold when an individual fails to develop a stable sense of self-worth due to the lack of appropriate emotional support from a child's first caregivers. A person with narcissistic tendencies often seeks validation from others to fill a void left by unmet emotional needs. For Sean Combs, the trauma of losing his father at a young age undoubtedly left an indelible mark. His mother Janice stepped into a dual role as both nurturer and an authoritarian, instilling in her son a drive to succeed, but perhaps failing to provide the emotional balance needed for Sean to form a secure sense of self. In addition, inappropriate boundaries, whether emotional, psychological, or physical, could have compounded the early seeds of insecurity in young Sean, which he sought to alleviate in unhealthy ways. Combs' need for control and dominance may stem from an attempt to compensate for the helplessness he felt as a child. His fragile ego, shaped by these early wounds, became a cornerstone of his adult identity. This fragility was evident in his reaction to personal rejection. His first breakup, reportedly one he experienced as unforgivable betrayal, set a pattern for how Combs would handle relationships. Unable to process the vulnerability that comes with rejection by a love interest, Combs seemingly turned to punishment and control. The women in his life became scapegoats for that initial hurt, and his interactions with them were marked by domination rather than intimacy. In the wake of this emotional wound, Combs adopted the player archetype. He employed toxic masculinity, specifically in the form of detachment, conquest, and the objectification of women. To be a player was not just a lifestyle, but a defense mechanism for Combs, shielding him from the pain of genuine emotional connection. Through tactics like love bombing, manipulation, and threats, Combs established control over the women in his life. Financial dependency, drugs, threats, and fear became tools to ensure their subjugation. The women who were not central to his life were often reduced to objects. Reports of exploitation involving sex workers and an overall dehumanization of individuals paints a dark picture of a man who saw relationships as commodities rather than connections. Combs' behavior points to an individual seeking to assert power in every aspect of his life and relationships, often at the expense of others' autonomy and dignity. However, Combs could not have left such a path of destruction without the collaboration of others. Those who worked for him, benefited from his influence, or sought his approval often ignored his more troubling behaviors. This culture of enabling is a hallmark of many powerful individuals, whose influence creates a shield of invincibility. As almost no one spoke out, Combs escalated his controlling, violent, and exploitative behaviors, seemingly testing the limits of what he could get away with. We've seen these abusive dynamics not just from Diddy, but from other high-powered individuals in the entertainment industry. The wealth and status of these perpetrators have silenced potential whistleblowers and kept victims trapped in cycles of dependency and fear. In such an environment, accountability is nearly impossible. For years, Combs' actions went unchecked, but as the saying goes, every dog has its day. The courage of Cassie Ventura to come forward and make her abuse and victimization public finally ripped off Combs' mask to reveal his dark side. But if not for the release of the hotel video exposing him, Diddy may have continued to escape consequences. Instead, the concrete evidence of his monstrous behavior brought years of alleged abuse to light, providing a platform for victims to share their stories and challenge the system that enabled Combs for so long. Cassie's courage in coming forward marks a pivotal moment in this story. It reminds us that power is not absolute, no matter how entrenched. The public reckoning Combs now faces underscores the need for systemic change in the entertainment industry, which prioritizes profit and image over justice and accountability. I'll leave you with one final question. How are we, as a society, complicit in allowing individuals with power and influence to become monsters? More importantly, how can we be instrumental in dismantling the systems that protect them? These are crucial questions to consider as we grapple with the fallout of Sean Combs' alleged crimes. As of December 5, 2024, Sean Combs is facing more than 24 civil lawsuits. Prosecutors are still interviewing witnesses regarding potential criminal charges, although the statute of limitations for some alleged victims may have expired. Employees and others associated with Combs' businesses are also being investigated. Combs' criminal trial is scheduled for May 5, 2025. He is facing 3 felony counts, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation for the purposes of prostitution. If convicted on these charges, he could face 15 years to life. Combs has pleaded not guilty and was denied bail 4 times, with prosecutors arguing that he poses a significant flight risk. The judge cited compelling evidence of Combs' propensity for violence and evidence supporting, quote, a serious risk of witness tampering to justify his ruling that Combs remained behind bars. He is currently being held at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. There is so much more I could go into about Diddy's life and crimes. Events are still unfolding and will be for some time. In addition, more information about his activities are being uncovered, those from his past, as well as his actions behind bars, and how he's preparing for his upcoming trial. I could not cover every aspect of this story, but I will touch on several points in a Patreon bonus episode, including what I've already mentioned in this episode. I'll also tell you how his close friends have responded to the shocking hotel video, who has cut ties with Diddy, and who has stayed in his corner, and how do they justify, or at least forgive, this abuse. What A-list celebrities have been caught up in the allegations surrounding this case, and how are they responding to it? This and so much more will be covered on the Patreon after show. To become a member, go to patreon.com/onceuponacrime to find out more and join. We will continue to follow this case, as will the rest of the world, it seems. I will bring you updates as events unfold. Follow Once Upon a Crime on our social media channels to receive alerts regarding breaking news on the cases we cover and to interact with me. All of the links to our social media can be found on our website, truecrimepodcast.com. That will do it for this episode of Once Upon a Crime and conclude our 2-part series on the life and crimes of Diddy. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the video accompanying this episode and other Once Upon a Crime episodes. There's a link in the show notes. There will only be one more episode of Once Upon a Crime released this year. After next week, we'll be off for our annual holiday break, and we'll return with weekly episodes on January 13th. If you want more episodes for your holiday break playlist, check out our extensive back catalog, which includes over 300 episodes you can binge. We also have created a Spotify playlist of our past holiday seasons, including episodes from our series, Holiday Homicides, Holidays in Hell, and the 12 Crimes of Christmas. The show notes also include a link for the Spotify playlist. In the meantime, stay tuned to listen to a preview of the new season of the phenomenal true crime podcast, Somebody Knows Something. I know you'll want to add their latest series about the disappearance and murder of Christy Heron to your playlist. You can find a link to listen and subscribe, you guessed it, in the show notes. Once Upon a Crime is written and produced by me, Esther Sanchez-Ludlow. My executive producer is Lorena Garcia. Additional research and writing for this episode was provided by Gemma Harris. Until next time, be good to one another. As promised, here's a special bonus. An interview with David Ridgen, host of the amazing true crime podcast, Someone Knows Something. In Season 9 of the award-winning podcast, David follows the case of Christine Heron, a teenager from Ontario who left for school in the spring of 1993 and was never seen again. A suspect emerged and even confessed to her murder. But the case fell apart, and Christine's family were left without answers. In the new season of Someone Knows Something, the Christine Heron case, David, along with Christine's mother, reopens the investigation and comes face to face with the man who said he killed Chrissy. You won't want to miss this season of Someone Knows Something. Make sure to subscribe and add it to your playlist. Here's a short interview I had with David to find out more about why he decided to follow this case for Season 9. At the end of our conversation, You'll hear a short clip from episode 1. You've been both a documentary filmmaker and a podcaster. In each medium, storytelling takes a different form to connect with the audience. Can you share what, as a storyteller, was the most essential for you in telling Christine's story on the podcast?
So, to me, storytelling is storytelling, whether it's a dream or a film or an artboard or with a microphone. I've seen people with email tags half a page long with all their various titles and awards and self-descriptors, but they all boil down to, quotation marks, storyteller. Means and methods are different, but if you can tell a good story around a campfire, chances are you'll tell a good story anywhere. Podcasting stories feature an audience relationship with the host that is different than all other mediums. That is true. Something in the closeness and proximity and centering of the host voice into your ears brings a kind of personal intimacy and connection, I found. People who listen to my podcasts think they know me. And when I meet them, they treat me like I'm part of their family. Podcasts, the way I see them, are closer to cinema than anything else. Screenplay format fits podcast format to some degree, but there are more chapters or acts, and in that way, podcasts are also similar to novels or serialized novels. There is a lot of storytelling terrain in podcasts, fewer timed slots or windows you have to hit, so it frees up the story and directions you can go. How does this apply to Christine Heron, her story? Chrissy was forgotten by everyone but those closest to her. She came from lesser means, a broken family. She was rebellious, but nobody deigned to tell her story or even look into it. This despite the fact that there was a rich trove of material hiding in the background that had never seen the light of day. The essential for me in telling Chrissy's narrative was to gather together as full a tale as possible to make sure that everyone knew what happened to her, and so that police who didn't know the story can make sure that in the future similar mistakes aren't made again.
What first drew you to this cold case? When you learned about the details, what aspects of this case made you feel it could be solved?
Well, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I've been looking at so-called cold cases since 2004. And I was developing some television documentaries for CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, public TV and radio up here in Canada. This was in the late 2000s, about unsolved disappearances and murders. And I recall Chrissy's case made the shortlist right away for several reasons. I attended a memorial service for her in Hanover, Ontario, a small town of 8,000 here in southwestern Ontario, just to do some initial research at the Lutheran church there. And something about the service, her photo up there on the table, how people spoke about her. I hadn't even met Chrissy's family yet, her mother. I remember saying to the associate producer who was there with me at the time that Chrissy was someone I wish we'd been able to meet. And I remember feeling that kind of heat of frustration about her case, that maybe I could help. A good reason to look at the case was that nobody had touched it. Literally, a mountain of information was available. Nobody knew about it, hidden behind publication bans that had long expired. Another good reason was that there seemed to be a suspect, and there had been a trial that had failed. And I wanted to know all about that and help Marianne, Chrissy's mother, to learn about all of it at the same time. Marianne was game, and I would never have looked at the case without her consent or direct participation.
How did you first approach this case? What was your square one to start investigating Christine's disappearance?
Well, for me, square one on any case is obviously talking to the family and having their direct participation nailed down. And then the investigative square one is really twofold. Develop a timeline for the last moments of the disappeared or murdered person. What were their last known movements? What are the known map points? And do these match or differ from the timeline on a different day, say a week or two before? The second parallel square one is to secure any documents I can from previous investigations or court cases. Look for news articles, make all the access requests I can because they can take a long time, and then start making inroads with archivists and police investigators, current or retired.
What do you most hope listeners will take away after listening to Christine's story in this season of Someone Knows Something?
Well, listeners will take away what they want, and we cannot control that. My hope is that police will listen intently and gain an understanding firsthand with how investigations might properly proceed. But also, I wanted Chrissy's story to play out to the fullest so that nothing would be hidden from view anymore. I think it's a story that shows that persistence and rigor and passion can solve a case.
We gather here this morning for a celebration of life, the life of Christine Heron, who has died by the violence of our fallen world.
From CBC Podcasts, I'm David Ridgen, and this is Someone Knows Something, Season 9.
Her and I had spent the morning together watching television, and then she left to go to school. She walked down the other side of the street and around the corner, and that was the last I've seen of her.
Christine Heron was 15 years old in the spring of 1993 when she disappeared, and in over 30 years there has been no trace of her.
I did know before the night was over she was dead, though. Call it mother's intuition or whatever, I knew she was gone.
But then, after many years, a prime suspect comes into focus.
The Crown Attorney told us it was a slam dunk at one point. He was 90% sure he was going to be convicted.
A story of murder and heartbreak and investigative error.
Listen to me very carefully, all right? Right now, you're under arrest for the murder of Christine Heron because you told that police officer that you killed her.
What happens when the truth seems to be a lie?
This story here, you and me, till the day I die, fucking doesn't leave these lips.
What happens when a mother refuses to give up?
I know all the different emotions you go through and how you got to handle it, and everybody kept telling me, why aren't you crying? I said, that's not going to get nothing done.
How do we know when someone is a killer?
I just want to talk to him.
About what?
I just want to ask him some questions to do with Christine.
I'm David Ridgen, and this is Someone Knows Something, Season 9, The Christine Heron Case. Coming soon, wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you know Christine? Did you kill Christine? Why did you confess to her murder?
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Someone Knows Something Season 9, The Christine Heron Case. I've included a link in the show notes.